In vain men shook their fists at the pitiless foes that swarmed before the gate. Curses they heeded not, nor understood the tongues of western men, crying with harsh voices like beasts and carrion birds. But soon there were few left in Minas Tirith who had the heart to stand up and defy the hosts of Mordor. For yet another weapon, swifter than hunger, the Lord of the Dark Tower had: dread and despair. The Nazgûl came again, and as their Dark Lord now grew and put forth his strength, so their voices, which uttered only his will and his malice, were filled with evil and horror. Ever they circled above the city, like vultures that expect their fill of doomed men's flesh. Out of sight and shot they flew, and yet were ever present, and their deadly voices rent the air. More unbearable they became, not less, at each new cry. At length even the stout-hearted would fling themselves to the ground as the hidden menace passed over them, or they would stand, letting their weapons fall from nevertheless hands, while into their minds a blackness came, and they thought no more of war, but only of hiding and of crawling, and of death. During all this black day, Faramir lay upon his bed in the chamber of the White Tower, wandering in a desperate fever, dying, someone said, and soon dying all men were saying upon the walls and in the streets. And by him his father sat, and said nothing, but watched, and gave no longer any heed to the defense. No hours so dark had Pippin known, not even in the clutches of the Uruk-hai. It was his duty to wait upon the Lord, and wait he did. Forgotten it seemed, standing by the door of the unlit chamber, mastering his own fears as best he could. And as he watched, it seemed to him that Denethor grew old before his eyes, as if something had snapped in his proud will, and his stern mind was overthrown. Grief maybe had wrought it, and remorse. He saw tears on that once tearless face, more unbearable than wrath.
Do not weep, Lord,
he stammered.
But perhaps he will get well. Have you asked Gandalf?
Comfort me not with wizards,
said Denethor.
The fool's hope has failed. The enemy has found it, and now his power waxes. He sees our very thoughts, and all we do is ruin us. I sent my son forth, unthanked, unblessed, out into needless peril, and here he lies, with poison in his veins. Nay, whatever may now betide in war, my line too is ending. Even the house of the Stewards has failed. Mean folk shall rule the last remnant of the kings of men, lurking in the hills until all are hounded out.
Men came to the door crying for the lord of the city.
Nay, I will not come down,
he said.
I must stay beside my son. He might still speak before the end. That is near. Follow whom you will, even the grey fool. Though his hope has failed, here I stay.
So it was that Gandalf took command of the last defense of the city of Gondor. Wherever he came, men's hearts would lift again, and the winged shadow pass from memory. Tirelessly he rode from citadel to gate, from north to south, about the wall, and with him went the Prince of Dol Amroth in his shining mail. For he and his knights still held themselves like lords in whom the race of Númenor ran true. Men that saw them whispered, saying, "Belike the old tales speak well. There is elvish blood in the veins of that folk, for the people of Nimrodel dwelt in that land long ago." And then one would sing amid the gloom, and some staves of the Lady of Nimrodel, or other songs of the Vale of Anduin out of vanished years. And yet, when they had gone, the shadow closed on men again, and their hearts went cold, and the valor of Gondor withered into ash. And so slowly they passed out of a dim day of fears into the darkness of a desperate night. Fires now raged unchecked in the first cycle of the city, and the garrison upon the outer wall was already in many places cut off from retreat. But the faithful who remained there at their posts were few. Most had fled beyond the second gate. Far behind the battle the river had been swiftly bridged, and all day more force and gear of war had poured across. Now at last, in the middle night, the assault was loosed. The vanguard passed through the trenches of fire, by many devious paths that had been between them. On they came, reckless of their loss as they approached, still bunched and herded within the range of bowmen on the wall. But indeed there were too few now left to do them great damage, though the light of the fires showed up many a mark for archers of such skill as Gondor once had boasted. Then, perceiving that the valor of the city was already beaten down, the hidden captain put forth his strength. Slowly the great siege towers built in Osgiliath rode forward in the dark. Messengers came again to the chamber in the White Tower, and Pippin let them enter, for they were urgent. Denethor turned his head slowly from Faramir's face and looked at them silently.
The first circle of the city is burning, Lord,
They said.
What are your commands?
You are still the Lord and Steward. Not all will follow Mithrandir. Men are flying from the walls and leaving them unmanned.
Why? Why do the fools fly? Said Denethor. Better to burn sooner than late. For burn we must. Go back to your bonfire. And I will go now to my pyre. To my pyre! No tomb for Denethor and Faramir. No tomb. No long, slow sleep of death embalmed. We will burn like the heathen kings before ever a ship sailed hither from the west. The west has failed. Go back and burn. The messengers without bow or answer turned and fled. Now Denethor stood up and released the favoured hand of Faramir that he had held. He is burning. Already burning.